July. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, the French President, Monsieur Macron, blames Sir Keir Starmer for the illegal migration crisis, suggesting we make it far too easy for those crossing the channel to work illegally and receive benefits. Has he got a point? Are pull factors to blame?
Well, we've got a great day in the channel today weather-wise, but funny enough, there are no small boats crossing. I wonder why.
Our two nations share not only values, but also the tireless determination to act on them in the world.
Oui, it's the second day of the French state visit, and the King claims our relationship with the French has gone from cordial to close. But what exactly are we getting in return for all this hospitality?
Well, King Charles has bid a formal farewell to President Macron in the Windsor Castle Gardens. Arguably, the easy bit is now over. Now it's the hard part in Downing Street. But what has the royal soft power done to soften the blow? More details shortly.
Promised not to increase income tax, not to increase national insurance, and not to increase VAT. Does the Prime Minister still stand by his promises?
Yes.
It is rare that he's able to give a clear answer, but I'm glad that he has done so.
Yes, pressed on tax plans, Sir Keir Starmer says he'll stick to his promise not to raise national insurance, VAT or income tax, but then he fails to roll out a wealth tax or indeed dragging millions of people into higher tax thresholds.
Elsewhere, Christian Horner has been released from his operational duties as the boss of Red Bull's Formula One racing team. The news comes a year after the scandal that engulfed him over sex texts and reportedly sent to a female employee.
I think that patients like me will not understand why, having received a 28.9% pay increase, resident doctors are planning to go on strike.
Back for more. Resident doctors, the new name for junior doctors, have narrowly voted for more strikes over pay, despite already receiving that 28.9% pay hike. Health Secretary Wes Streeting warns these striking doctors the public will not forgive you.
And thousands of defendants, including suspected sex offenders and drug dealers, could be stripped of the right to a jury trial under radical proposals to tackle chronic court backlogs. Is this true justice?
And climate campaigners descending on Westminster, demanding MPs take urgent action to preserve our planet. Meg O'Neill is from the Climate Coalition.
This is an opportunity for us to come together and celebrate the power of what happens when we show up together.
Well, as ever, there's a lot going on this Wednesday afternoon, isn't there?
There certainly is, and I think a really important moment in the House of Commons just in the last few minutes. Of course, the Prime Minister there being very, very cocky and very, very confident, saying, absolutely, we're not going to raise the rate of VAT, of income tax or national insurance. But then he refused to rule out freezing the thresholds, dragging people into higher rates. Even though those rates might stay the same, more people would be paying higher rates than they otherwise would be. And it's interesting because Rachel Reeves explicitly ruled out doing just that in her last budget.
Suspicious, isn't it? Yes, a stealth tax, as we call it. Millions of pensioners potentially dragged into income tax for the first time in a long time.
Oh,
it could really hit people in the pocket. Are we being told the truth by this government?
And the crucial thing is that Rachel Reeves at her last budget said she's choosing to uplift these thresholds because she said that freezing them would go against her manifesto commitment of no new taxes on working people. But now it looks like, with all the extra spending, it's going to have to be more spending on personal independence payments, more spending on the winter fuel allowance than previously had been thought, more spending in all sorts of areas. Is she going to have to break that manifesto commitment and drag people into higher tax bands?
Yes, and I hope you're also listening to what Mark White snuck in there about how the boats haven't arrived today. Could that have anything to do with Monsieur Macron and the French authorities doing something to protect the reputation? I don't know. We'll find out more after the headlines. Sorry.
Emily, thank you very much. The top stories. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch pressed Sir Keir Starmer on tax rises at Prime Minister's questions today, with the Prime Minister committing not to raise income tax, VAT or national insurance on employees as promised in Labour's manifesto. Ms Badenoch also put it to him that he's flirting with calls for a wealth tax.
Mr Speaker, in their manifesto last year, Labour promised not to increase income tax, not to increase national insurance and not to increase VAT. Does the Prime Minister still stand by his promises?
Yes.
It is rare that he's able to give a clear answer, but I'm glad that he has done so, because he also promised, in fact, he boasted that he solved the doctor strike, but only the Prime Minister, who was so weak and giving 28% pay rise to doctors, only now we see that they're still voting to strike again. He folds in every negotiation and claims that it is a triumph. Yes, he does. And we saw at the budget, Mr Speaker, more promises. The Chancellor promised that she would lift the freeze on income tax and national insurance thresholds because, in her words, they hurt working people. Is that still government policy?
We are absolutely fixed on our fiscal rules. We remain committed to them. We remain committed to our budget, to our manifesto commitments. I realise that sticking to your fiscal rules and your manifesto commitments is a bit unfamiliar to the party opposite, but it's because of the decisions the Chancellor took, that this government has taken, that we can update the House. £120 billion of inward investment into this country since we took office. Business confidence at a 9-year high. That's longer than the Leader Opposition has been in Parliament. Deloitte this week saying the UK is now the best place to invest, creating 384,000 jobs. What a contrast to the mess that we inherited from the party opposite.
The King and President Emmanuel Macron enjoyed a long goodbye as the two men bid farewell after a successful start to the French leader's state visit to the UK. In a sign of their friendship, King Charles and the French leader clasped hands for several seconds as they parted company at Windsor Castle when the first element of the three-day trip came to an end. Macron's demanding tough action to make the UK less attractive to illegal migrant arrivals. In a speech last night, the King shared his concerns over irregular migration.
Today, our two countries face a multitude of more complex threats, emanating from multiple directions. As friends and as allies, we face them together. Of course, we would not be neighbours if we did not have our differences. Our security services and police will go further still to protect us against the profound challenges of terrorism, organised crime, cyber attacks, and, of course, irregular migration across the English Channel.
In other news, thousands of victims of the infected blood scandal are being harmed further by long waits for compensation, the chair of the public inquiry into the disaster has said this afternoon. In a hard-hitting report, Sir Brian Langstaff said there were obvious injustices in the way the scheme had been devised. He adds only 460 people had received compensation. It's thought 30,000 people were infected with HIV and hepatitis B or C in the 1970s and 1980s after being given contaminated blood products on the NHS. Resident doctors in England will walk out for 5 days later on this month. They will walk off the job from 7 a.m. on the 25th of July in a dispute over pay, the British Medical Association says. More than 26,000 resident doctors voted today in favour of those strikes. Now, reports suggest Christian Horner's been sacked by the Red Bull Formula One team, but Horner's team denies that that's the case. The British team principal became involved in a scandal last year about text messages sent to a female employee. The 51-year-old has been in charge of the Formula One team since its inception in 2005, leading them to 8 Drivers' Championships and 6 Constructors' Championship titles. Gregg Wallace has been sacked as presenter of MasterChef after an independent inquiry into allegations of serious misconduct. The decision comes as 15 new claims emerge, including accusations that Wallace groped colleagues and exposed himself to junior staff. He denies the allegations, though admitted some of his past comments had been inappropriate. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a snapshot of the markets today. The pound buying you $1.3599 and €1.1609. The price of gold, £2,419.33 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,860 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 minutes past 1. Now, President Macron of France has blamed Britain for the soaring number of migrants crossing the Channel, despite the United Kingdom paying over £700 million to the French since 2018 to solve the problem.
Well, Macron demanded Sir Keir Starmer do more to address the various pull factors that encourage illegal crossings.
Well, does the French president have a point? Joining us is our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, a curious thing for the president to have said in what's supposed to be a cordial state visit.
If he said it, because according to the Elysee Palace, who've been on a sort of correcting of the narrative or damage limitation, however you want to describe it, they say that President Macron did not say that it was the UK's fault. He did say, and I think he reiterated this in his speech last night, that certainly some of the pull factors need to be addressed, pull factors such as the ease with which illegal migrants can get work in the grey, black, illegal economy, however you want to describe it. Also issues around the benefit systems that those on, those asylum seekers are eligible for as well. So it's clear that he does see there being certain pull factors that could be addressed, but he has not gone as far, according to the Elysee Palace, as saying that it's all Britain's fault.
Yes, well, I mean, if you look at the conditions that migrants are in over in Calais, in warehouses, in tents, in quite dangerous situations, then, of course, it does have more appeal to be in a hotel over here and with various benefits. But, Mark, you've noticed something in the Channel today, something quite curious. Tell us.
I've noticed nothing in the Channel. That's why it's quite curious. Today is a really good day. The wind has died right down. The seas that have been choppy for quite a few days now, since last Friday, when we had 500 plus migrants coming across the Channel. We've had wind in the Channel that's just made these small boat journeys really impassable. So today is the first day when the wind has died down enough to allow the boats to come. And normally we would expect to see a very significant surge in small boats coming across, taking advantage of the fact that it's now calmed down and they haven't been able to cross for quite a while. But I've been checking constantly with sources on the other side of the Channel with our producer in Kent, and there is nothing, nada, non. There is no small boats crossing. Now, why could that be? Could the French authorities be out in very significant numbers along the French coast, ensuring that any attempts to get across are disrupted? Well, maybe that's a conspiracy theory too far, but I am checking with sources to find out if there is an increase in law enforcement activity along the northern coast of France. Because if that were true, if it was about trying to save the blushes of the French president, then maybe a legitimate question to be asked then would be, well, if you can do it today, why can't you do it every day?
Well, that is a very important point to raise, of course. But the issue of small boat crossings across the Channel was attempted to be raised in Prime Minister's questions today by Nigel Farage. I think what was really, really interesting about this question wasn't so much what Nigel Farage said, but the response that we heard from the rest of the House. Let's listen in.
And that we demand, the country demands, that you say to the French president, will you shut up?
Don't be so disrespectful.
That you say to the French president, we will not accept undocumented males across the English Channel, and that you are not dictated to by an increasingly arrogant, anti-Brexit French president.
His proposal for 10 years, wagging the Tory dog, has been to break everything and claim that's how you fix things, to stick two fingers up at your neighbours and then expect them to work with us. And he votes against the Borders Bill, which gives more powers to our law enforcement to deal with security at our border. And Mr. Speaker, the reason for that is he has no interest in fixing the problem because he wants to milk it and exploit it. That's the truth about him and his party.
Well, Mark, what do you make of that?
Well, you managed to get a clip of him eventually getting his question out, but Nigel Farage tried repeatedly, really, to be heard over that din within the Commons chamber, and it was a rabble. I mean, it's clear that they are certainly trying to drown out the question, I think, from Nigel Farage, and many might say they just don't get it, because whatever they might think personally of Nigel Farage and his policies, I think it's probably true to say that he chimes with more people in the country and the concerns that they have over the small boat crisis than perhaps some of those who raised very loud voices in the chamber.
Well, yes, you do risk showing disdain to those people, the British public, when you heckle like that. Mark White, thank you very much indeed for now, our Home and Security editor.
Well, let's discuss this issue in a bit more detail with the Director of First Migration, Dean Morgan. Dean, thanks for joining us here on the programme. This seems like it is an intractable issue for government after government, Prime Minister after Prime Minister. Could something be agreed with the French President that finally sorts it out?
I mean, this sounds to me like the easiest deal that I've never had to negotiate, because I don't understand why the French president has to come here to tell our government what they should be doing as part of a comprehensive immigration system in the first place. You know, why don't we just get the French civil servants at taxpayer expense to draft up everything our government should be doing and give it to the UK government, and then they can just implement it.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. But does President Macron have a point as well, talking about the pull factors over here, how it is so easy for people to work illegally in this country, how we put them up in hotel accommodation, how they have access to some funds as well? Does he have a point that we need to address those concerns?
Oh, completely. I mean, obviously, there's been the recent chat about Rwanda or third countries to be processing asylum claims. I mean, people are taking, you know, ridiculous risks crossing the channel and, you know, coming here for what? You know, most of it is to do with economic migration. And I know people, you know, don't want to have, you know, that discussion. But, you know, if people were put off and there was a serious deterrent, if you come here, you go to a third country, and you have to be processed there, the numbers would drop off immediately, because migrants would rather go to France and Germany or other places that are seen as a soft touch. But, you know, we have a wider problem. If you go and look at the Refugee Convention, 1951, it was written at a time where there was not globalization, mass transport, mass migration from poorer countries to more affluent ones. So, you know, we should be pulling out of all of these treaties and demanding that they get renegotiated and have the numbers 2025 on there to make them so that we can actually enforce our borders. And likewise, our navy's off around the world in the Sea of Azov and in the Taiwanese Strait. How come the people smugglers have logistics our navy are envious of? You know, again, these questions never get asked, and all you get is Keir Starmer blaming Nigel Farage, you know, making out he's far right. The British people have had enough, and I think if the establishment don't get their act together, they're going to lose it.
All right. Well, Dean Morgan, thank you very much indeed. You're the Director of First Migration. I wonder if the government are listening. Well, in response to the front page of the Telegraph newspaper, which says Macron is blaming Keir Starmer for all of this, a senior Elysée source said the French president looks forward to working with the Prime Minister constructively on this shared priority.
Oh, there we go. The President Emmanuel Macron and his wife, of course, continue their state visit to the UK today and tomorrow. The couple stayed at Windsor Castle last night, hosted supported by the King and Queen. And in a speech, King Charles declared Britain and France would not be friends without their differences, before sharing his concerns over what he described as irregular migration.
Today, our two countries face a multitude of more complex threats, emanating from multiple directions. As friends and as allies, we face them together. Of course, we would not be neighbours if we did not have our differences. Our security services and police will go further still to protect us against the profound challenges of terrorism, organised crime, cyber attacks, and, of course, irregular migration across the English Channel.
I don't think I've ever heard the King talk about irregular immigration, or illegal immigration for that matter. That's a very Keir Starmer term, isn't it?
I wonder who wrote that speech. Or should we ask our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who can join us live from Windsor? Do I detect a slight hand of number 10 in there?
I think that is probably accurate, Tom. It also reflected what President Macron said in the Palace of Westminster yesterday as well. He also described the Channel migrant crisis as irregular migration too. When it comes to a speech at a state banquet delivered by His Majesty the King, it is written by him, his staff, but crucially in close consultation with the British government, mainly the Prime Minister, namely even the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary. So everyone's kind of had a bit of a hand in it. But of course the King has to and does remain above politics. The whole point of His Majesty in this scenario is the so-called royal soft power. And this morning that is what we continue to see play out here at Windsor Castle. President Macron and his wife Brigitte made a private visit to St George's Chapel, which is just behind me here, to visit the grave and pay their respects to Queen Elizabeth II, who of course he met on a number of occasions, President Macron. And then it was just kind of informalities really, morning after the night before of a state banquet where perhaps a bit of wine was drunk, some champagne as well, bit of a stroll around the garden from the King and President Macron, and then they viewed a carriage which was gifted by a former King of France to Queen Victoria in the 1840s. There was also a horse which they were introduced to, gifted to Queen Elizabeth II by President Macron to mark her Platinum Jubilee in 2022. So it was a bit of mingling in the garden in this lovely weather we've got in Windsor at the moment. And then they bid a formal farewell. So that's kind of it. President Macron went to London. The Queen's gone off to Wimbledon with her sister for a jolly afternoon. So the easy bit, in theory, is kind of done now for President Macron and the British government. The royal soft power is over. Now the hard bit comes. The President is meeting Prime Minister Starmer and his wife inside Downing Street today. That's probably more of an informal discussion because, as you've been discussing on your programme, Tom and Emily, the political crunch talks really are going to happen tomorrow during that summit in Downing Street. There is one more final bit of royal soft power that's taking place this evening, and that is another banquet inside the Guildhall in central London. That's being attended by the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester on behalf of the King. But in terms of interaction with senior royals and the President of France, we think that's over for the state visit.
OK, very interesting. Cameron Walker, our royal correspondent there in Westminster. So it starts with the royal stuff, then the politics begins.
Yeah. Interesting that the President visited the grave of Queen Elizabeth II. She still exerts some of that royal power even years after her death.
Oh, absolutely. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. Yes, thousands of defendants, including suspected sex offenders and drug dealers, well, they could be stripped of the right to a jury trial under radical proposals to tackle chronic court backlogs. Is that the right solution?
But after the break, Christian Horner has been released from his operational duties as the boss of Red Bull's Formula One racing team. The news comes a year after the scandal that engulfed him over sex texts that were reportedly sent to a female employee.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Vegetarians now have a greater desire to wield power more than their meat-eating counterparts. I mean, you like a sausage, don't you, Big Ins?
I like a sausage, but I have gone off meat per se, funnily enough, as I'm getting older. I think there are, you know, it takes a lot of eating a piece of meat, if you pardon the expression.
And the older you get, the more you find that it takes a lot of meat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I must admit, I have more of a conscience about eating meat as I get older.
Yeah.
And that's a fondness of animals brings that. And if you ever go on Instagram and you look at cows and horses and pigs,
they're wonderful
they're all
things.
affectionate and
know,
incredible.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
And there we are, putting it into our mouths and eating it.
What do you think about the move to enforce vegetarianism on people, though? Because especially in schools and some universities, there's this trend for Meat-Free Monday, where there's this enforced absence of meat on children.
I think it's ridiculous. Let kids do what they want, to be honest. Within reason, obviously, a healthy diet, da-da-da-da-da. But no, I think, you know, I don't eat meat. The husband eats meat. It's not an issue. Eat what you want. But I think that the fact that they're trying to force this into schools, look, let kids experiment, give them a vegetarian option.
Yes,
let
yeah,
them
and all
see
schools
what
do that.
just options.
It has just become political, and also there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I know children are often told that eating meat is terrible for the environment, but importing avocados thousands of miles is also terrible for the environment.
But also, I mean, a lot of vegetarian meals, certainly processed vegetarian meals, have got a load of salt and fat and sugar in them, so they're actually worse for you than eating a lean piece of meat.
I think the tide is turning now, because the new trend amongst young people, particularly young men, is protein. Chicken, breasts, tuna. That's the new trend, to get as much protein in them as possible. It's very difficult to do when you're vegetarian.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past 1, and we can take you live to Downing Street, where Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte are walking down the famous now, approaching a meeting with the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer.
Yes, it's all very red carpet, isn't it? Stopping for some photos. You can hear the cameras going off, can't you, in the background? Oh, a little hug.
A warm embrace there between the Prime Minister and the President. Of course, it's all been smiles so far. It's all been niceties. It's all been the royal flourish that only Britain can attach to a state visit. But now is when the nitty-gritty negotiation is due to begin. Perhaps it will be slightly less smiles and hugs behind that black door, because they do need to reach a deal.
Absolutely. Now, the four, so there is Keir Starmer, for those listening on the radio, so Keir Starmer and his wife. We also have President Macron and his wife Brigitte, too. They're posing outside the front door of number 10 there for a quick photo and a handshake between the two gentlemen there.
One of those very manly handshakes that Macron is famous for. You know, he never lets go of Donald Trump's hand when they're holding their hands for a very long time, but that is a sign of sort of alpha male righteousness right there.
And what they're wearing, Brigitte Macron, she's wearing a suit, tailored suit, and Lady Victoria, Starmer's wife, is wearing a floral summer dress, I'd say.
Absolutely, and there the famous black door closes behind them. We'll, of course, be bringing updates on whatever is achieved throughout this afternoon of meetings there in Downing Street.
Oh, let's hope something's achieved, yes, for the benefit of the British taxpayer, I hope. We'll bring you more as and when we hear what's going on behind that door. But in other news, not a great day for Christian Horner, who's been released from operational duties as Red Bull's Formula One team principal after 20 years.
Well, what's being described as a dismissal comes 17 months after he was accused by a female colleague of inappropriate behaviour.
Yes, he was twice exonerated of the claims by the Formula One team's parent company.
Well, Red Bull published a statement saying Red Bull has released Christian Horner from his operational duties with effect from today and has appointed Laurent Mekies as the CEO of Red Bull Racing.
OK, we're joined now by motoring journalist Steve Fowler. Steve, tell us, who is Christian Horner and how did we get to this point?
Well, Christian Horner it almost feels like the Alex Ferguson of Formula One. He's been there for 20 years heading up the Red Bull Racing operation. He was there when the business was set up. Of course, it was Jaguar Racing before then, not very successful as Jaguar Racing. Stewart Ford before then. So these teams always morph into other things. So Christian Horner, I mean, he's a motor racing stalwart. He's been in and around motor racing for his entire career. Obviously had a go at driving himself at some stage, as most people who stay in Formula One do. But yeah, he's been at the helm for 20 years. So this is quite a sizable moment. Although some might say, what took them so long?
Yes, and we're just looking at pictures of him beside his wife, Geri Halliwell, known to some as Ginger Spice from the past, from the pop group. Now, there was quite a scandal, wasn't there, between himself and a female colleague, allegations over sex texts and the like. Does that have anything to do with what's happened today?
Well, of course, we don't know. What we do know, there's been a lot of political infighting at Red Bull Racing. There's been Team Verstappen, as it's known, Max Verstappen and his father. The questions over how well Jos Verstappen, himself a former Formula One driver, got on with Christian Horner, and lots of rumours and counter-rumours last year. As for what went on last year, of course, there were two internal investigations which both cleared Christian Horner, but who really knows? I mean, it may well be, some may assume that it looks like a convenient time right now because on the track, performance hasn't been great. Yes, Red Bull Racing have won a couple of Grand Prix this year, but I think that's more down to the brilliance of Max Verstappen behind the wheel. There's talk of him going to Mercedes next year. But also, you look at a lot of people have left Red Bull Racing. Now, you might describe that as careless. You know, a lot of very senior people, starting with Adrian Newey, the brilliant designer, who a lot of people will credit Red Bull Racing's success with over the years. So Adrian Newey has left and gone to Aston Martin. Jonathan Wheatley, who's the sporting director, has gone. Sorry, I have a dog barking in the background.
Don't worry.
With Christian Horner leaving. But Adrian Newey left. Jonathan Wheatley's gone to Sauber. Of course, Sauber came third at the British Grand Prix, ahead of Red Bull Racing. And
how much would Christian? Sorry to interrupt, but how much would Christian Horner have been on, salary-wise?
Oh, I have no idea. I would imagine it would be a very healthy seven-figure sum. Let's put it that way. There's a surprising amount of money in Formula One, although some.
But he'll be snapped up. But he'll be snapped up by someone else.
Whether he'll be snapped up or not, I don't know. He's a divisive character. Let's put it that way. Let's wait and see.
Gosh, well, intrigue abounds. Steve Fowler, motoring journalist, thanks indeed for joining us and talking us through this curious story.
It is a bit curious, actually. We'll find out more, I'm sure. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up, yes. Apparently thousands of climate campaigners are descending on Westminster today, demanding MPs take urgent action to preserve our planet. Yes, that's the cliffs of Dover.
Yeah, I haven't yet seen these thousands of protesters, but
maybe
they're all hiding. But after the break, thousands of defendants, including suspected sex offenders and drug dealers, could be stripped of their right to a jury trial under radical proposals to tackle chronic court backlogs. But is this the right solution? Well, that after your headlines.
Thank you. The headlines at 1:30. The King and President Emmanuel Macron enjoyed a long goodbye as the two men bid farewell after a successful start to the French leader's state visit. Macron and his wife Brigitte have just arrived to number 10 to be hosted by the Prime Minister. Resident doctors in England will walk out for 5 days later this month. They'll walk off the job from 7 a.m. on the 25th of July in a dispute over pay. Reports suggest Christian Horner's been sacked by the Red Bull Formula One team. His team denies this is the case, though. The British team principal became involved in a scandal last year about text messages sent to a female employee. Gregg Wallace has been sacked as presenter of MasterChef after an independent inquiry into allegations of serious misconduct. The decision comes as 50 new claims emerge, including accusations that Wallace groped colleagues and exposed himself to junior staff. He denies the allegations. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Most places having a fine, bright day today with some summer sunshine, and temperatures are starting to tick up. Another hot spell of weather is on the way, courtesy of this high pressure that's building in across the country. Now, all these weather fronts dangling across northern Scotland. Quite a bit of thick cloud here at times, and maybe some drizzly rain possible across Orkney in particular later on. The cloud thick enough for maybe the odd light shower over southwest Scotland. And there's more cloud than yesterday over parts of England and Wales. It's not blue skies all the way, far from it, but most areas dry and bright, and with some sunshine coming through at times. Temperatures getting up into the low 20s quite widely, maybe 27, 28 in and around the London area. It's a bit cooler further north, where we've got the cloud and the patchy outbreaks of rain. But further south, it should be fine. I think we'll see the cloud breaking up even more as we go into this evening. A fine summer's evening for the majority. A bit of mist and low cloud possible around the coasts of the east of Northern Ireland, and some thicker cloud again across the Western Isles of Scotland and the Northern Isles. The patchy rain edging away from Orkney and pushing up towards Shetland during this evening, so turning a bit damp here. As we go through the nights, not a great deal of change. Most places will stay dry. If anything, we'll see the cloud melting away, certainly from many inland areas. Always the possibility of the mist and low cloud returning to some of the coasts, especially around the southwest. And the cloud will thicken once more over the Western Isles of Scotland, with some drizzly rain pushing back in here through the early hours as the breeze picks up. Quite a warm night, temperatures holding up in the teens in most urban areas. On to Thursday, and it will be a hotter day, a sunnier day for most of England and Wales, southern and eastern parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland also probably seeing more sunshine tomorrow. The north coast may be seeing some thicker cloud, and the west coast of Scotland again susceptible to cloud and rain. Quite breezy here as well, but for most it's all about the sunshine and those temperatures rising into the mid-20s, 30 for some.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. A broken down vehicle on the A90 southbound at Clean Hill roundabout is causing restrictions, so drive carefully. The M4 westbound is closed due to roadworks between junctions 24 at Coldra and 28 at Tredegar Park. Diversions are in place. On the southbound M6 in Warrington, a road traffic incident has closed one lane. In Devon, be cautious on the M5 southbound at junction 29, where a broken down vehicle is causing a lane closure. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast services are disrupted between Crewe and Manchester Piccadilly. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 37 minutes past 1. Now, in a bid to save our broken justice system and resolve more cases more quickly, the number of jury trials could be reduced under new reforms.
Yeah, so currently there is a backlog of 77,000 Crown Court cases, seeing some trial dates pushed back as far as 2029. But is this the answer to just sort of scrap jury trials for things, say, like sex offenders, apparently?
No, pretty extraordinary stuff. Let's discuss it with our political correspondent Olivia Utley. Olivia, great to see you in the studio. This seems like a really radical proposal.
It's a really radical proposal. The Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, asked for a radical shake-up of the justice system, and this report today has been published by Brian Levison. At the moment, the government's line is that it's going to consider the proposals, but given that Mahmood ordered a radical shake-up, it would be very odd if she then refused to accept the radical shake-up that has been proposed by Levison. Essentially, what this would do is massively reduce the number of trials by jury. One way that it would do that is a rule that if you're facing a sentence of less than 2 years, you wouldn't be tried by a jury at all. all. And then there would be the end to these cases which are called either way cases, which is where defendants get to choose whether they're tried by a magistrate or by a jury. And instead of that, it would just automatically, they would be tried by both a magistrate and a judge. Now, obviously, the vast majority of defendants would choose to be tried by a jury. So it would massively reduce the backlog, which, as you mentioned, there is now 77,000 cases. It is necessary for there to be some sort of change. Mahmood is certainly right about that. Since 2019, the number of days between an offence being committed and a trial actually being completed has gone up from 500 days to 700 days. Now, 700 days, that's over 2 years. Obviously, there's issues with witnesses just forgetting key details of what they saw, of defendants getting sort of bored with the whole proceedings, of people absconding, etc., etc. Part of that is obviously due to lockdown, part of it's due to much more complicated crimes. You've got big gang crimes with multi-defendants, etc. So there is a really big problem in the justice sector. Whether this is the answer, I mean, it remains to be seen. Obviously, trial by jury was enshrined in the Magna Carta back in 1215, and is basically synonymous with proper justice in this country. So I think these proposals will be very, very unpopular, both with the opposition, of course, and with defendants. Let's see what Shabana Mahmood decides to do.
Yes, I've heard Robert Jenrick today, the Shadow Justice Secretary, talking about how this could be a slippery slope to abolishing jury trials altogether. I mean, is that a possibility?
Well, at the moment, the proposals say that they would only cover less serious crimes, so crimes which only would have the longest sentence could be 2 years. But of course, 2 years, some of those crimes are really quite serious. As you mentioned there, sexual assault could be under that, child abduction could be under that. And I think the idea of a child abduction or sexual assault not being tried by a jury would be a bit of an anathema to British people. I don't think it is the sort of abolition of the jury service altogether, and there is a possibility that more jury service could be brought back in after that backlog is cleared. But at the moment, it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon.
OK, well, Olivia Utley, thanks indeed for bringing us those details. Let's discuss a bit more with the Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange, David Spencer. David, this seems like a pretty extraordinary thing for the Justice Secretary to be talking about. I mean, would this really be the end of a more than 800-year tradition of trial by jury in this country?
Well, I think it's important to know that trial by jury has been a cornerstone of English justice for centuries, as you've been saying. The reality is that actually the vast majority of cases are dealt with in the magistrates' courts already. So about 1.4 million cases are dealt with in the magistrates' court without a jury. Magistrates and either alone or as a bench sit in the magistrates' court, and about 113,000 cases are heard in the Crown courts already. So actually, the number of cases that are tried by a jury is only probably about less than 10% of the total number of cases. So I think that's important to know right at the outset. The concern I have about this particular proposal is that it risks building in, as well as the concerns around reducing the amount of trial by jury, is actually the risk of building into the criminal justice system more complexity, because the proposal that's being made here is that, as well as having the Crown courts and the magistrates' courts, which we have at the moment, is essentially building in an additional tier of Crown courts where other types of cases will be heard, as you've been talking about already. And this added complexity is potentially a risk which will only make some of the problems that we're seeing in the Crown courts even worse. When you combine that with actually the biggest concern I have with this review is that actually the review potentially means that there will be far fewer criminals going to prison. And when you look at this review by Lord Leveson alongside the review that was done by David Gork earlier this year, what we risk, I think, is seeing fewer criminals going to prison, and the criminals that do go to prison going there for less time. And that, for me, is the biggest concern about this. And I think the real risk is that the government are not just trying to tackle the backlog, which they need to do in the Crown Court system, but actually the big question here is it revealing an ideological position by the government that is just not very tough on crime? And that's my biggest concern here, because that is what the public want. They want to see a tough on crime agenda.
And yet, David, is it not the case that often juries are less tough on certain criminals than judges can be. Sometimes juries can be won over by a criminal who turns up with a sweet smile and a nice suit, and sometimes those judges could indeed hand down harsher penalties.
Well, it's difficult to know what goes on in the jury room because, of course, those deliberations are completely confidential and sacrosanct. So we don't know technically what decisions or what reasons juries come to decisions. What I would say is that if you or I were accused of a crime, hopefully wrongly accused, but we were up in court, then we would probably want a jury to be able to make that decision. And certainly that has been the cornerstone of English justice for centuries now, and it needs to be very, very carefully thought about before we start to do away with it.
Yes, I tend to believe that you're more likely to have an ideologically motivated judge than jury. But David Spencer, thank you very much indeed. You raised some very important points, some concerning points. Head of Crime and Justice at the Policy Exchange think tank.
Now, there's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. Yes, it's an incredible £54,321. Here are all the details you'll need to win.
You have the chance to win our biggest cash prize to date in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just the chance to sit back, relax, and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? £54,321 in tax-free cash has to be won. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, now, if you're looking for somewhere to spend all of that money that you're going to win, well, maybe you want to check the travel weather.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Largely sunny skies across the Mediterranean. It is a little bit breezy in parts of Greece and Turkey over the next couple of days, but still lots of blue sky to be had here. Small chance of a shower in Croatia, but mostly they're staying away to the north and east. Small chance of a shower across Catalonia as well, but most of Spain dry and sunny. Bit of an onshore breeze bringing some cloud to the coasts of Portugal, and fine and sunny in the Canaries. Continued risk of a shower too in Barcelona into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Chu, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
The 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Dougie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations.
Right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is he? What's he doing there?
They already know who you are, though.
Don't miss this special reunion. Eamon and Anne together again only on GB News Breakfast this weekend from 6 a.m.
And is that a gardening tan?
No, it's a cypress tan.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 minutes to 2, and there's a mass lobby today of members of Parliament in Westminster.
Yes, by the Climate Coalition, who also projected a giant image onto the White Cliffs of Dover last night, which read 89% of people want climate action. Well, Helen Meach is with us in the studio. She's the Executive Director of the Climate Coalition, the group behind this mass lobby. So, Helen, what's the point of all this then?
Well, today we've got 5,000 people who've come from the length and breadth of the UK. These are parents, they are grandparents, they are doctors, firefighters, teachers who are here to talk about the way that climate change and loss of nature is affecting their everyday lives and to call upon our MPs to act now and change forever.
Have they all turned up, though? Because I was just outside and I didn't see much. I didn't see many people.
It's because they're mostly inside. All of the meetings with MPs are happening inside buildings, but we have got about 5,000 people here in Westminster today, here in this building and in various other venues and across the road in Houses of Parliament too.
Now, what is it exactly that you want the government to do? Because I'm sure the government would argue they are doing a huge amount to combat climate change. I mean, there's taxes on all of our energy bills, there's enormous numbers of solar farms and wind farms going up, they've banned basically coal out of power generation, there's no fracking in this country. I mean, haven't they basically done a laundry list of all that you want?
We've seen some really clear signs of progress, as you've just described, but there's things that risk undermining that. For example, the Planning and Infrastructure Bill that's going through Parliament at the moment, that's a real threat to nature here in the UK. There's also the cuts to UK aid.
Why is the Planning and Infrastructure Bill a threat to nature? Because they say they're going to just be more efficient with creating new nature reserves rather than each individual project having to have a sort of mini nature attachment to it.
It's not always as simple as recreating nature. There are ancient woodlands, there are other well-established nature areas which are at risk, and if this bill proceeds as currently planned, they could be damaged and lost forever.
OK, well, Helen Meach, thank you very much. You're from the Climate Coalition. Right, we've got the latest meeting between Sir Keir Starmer and President Macron ongoing.
Let's listen in.
The friendship between our two countries, our two nations and ourselves. And it's built by the past. Our past story and as well what we did together during the past few months, I do believe, especially on Ukraine. And for me, this state visit and the summit are a unique opportunity in these challenging times to work together on Ukraine, and we will have the opportunity to have this coalition of the willings through BTC on Thursday, right after the summit, to build stronger links and make big moves forward on defense, security, technology, economy, have more exchange on culture, education, research, and when we look at climate change, AI, but as well as this changing time from Ukraine to Middle East, I think the partnership and the friendship between UK and France is absolutely, I would say, a game changer for not just Europeans, but a lot of these issues. So I want to thank you for your hospitality, the great discussions we already had yesterday evening, and thank obviously His Majesty the King and the whole country for this warm welcome.
Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's the bit that we're allowed to see, all smiles and handshakes. I wonder what will go on in the rooms that we're not allowed to see. Well, those meetings in Downing Street taking place throughout the course of the afternoon.
Yes, so do stick with us here on GB News. Good afternoon, Britain. We've got lots more coming up. Of course, from those meetings, what will be said, what will be heard, what will be done. We'll be back after the weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Most places having a fine, bright day today with some summer sunshine, and temperatures are starting to tick up. Another hot spell of weather is on the way, courtesy of this high pressure that's building in across the country. Now, all these weather fronts dangling across northern Scotland. Quite a bit of thick cloud here at times, and maybe some drizzly rain possible across Orkney in particular later on. The cloud thick enough for maybe the odd light shower over southwest Scotland. And there's more cloud than yesterday over parts of England and Wales. It's not blue skies all the way, far from it, but most areas dry and bright, and with some sunshine coming through at times. Temperatures getting up into the low 20s quite widely, maybe 27, 28 in and around the London area. It's a bit cooler further north, where we've got the cloud and the patchy outbreaks of rain. But further south, it should be fine. I think we'll see the cloud breaking up even more as we go into this evening. A fine summer's evening for the majority. A bit of mist and low cloud possible around the coasts of the east of Northern Ireland, and some thicker cloud again across the Western Isles of Scotland and the Northern Isles. The patchy rain edging away from Orkney and pushing up towards Shetland during this evening, so turning a bit damp here. As we go through the nights, not a great deal of change. Most places will stay dry. If anything, we'll see the cloud melting away, certainly from many inland areas. Always the possibility of the mist and low cloud returning to some of the coasts, especially around the southwest. And the cloud will thicken once more over the Western Isles of Scotland, with some drizzly rain pushing back in here through the early hours as the breeze picks up. Quite a warm night, temperatures holding up in the teens in most urban areas. On to Thursday, and it will be a hotter day, a sunnier day for most of England and Wales, southern and eastern parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland also probably seeing more sunshine tomorrow. The north coast may be seeing some thicker cloud, and the west coast of Scotland again susceptible to cloud and rain. Quite breezy here as well, but for most it's all about the sunshine and those temperatures rising into the mid-20s, 30 for some.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Now, Sir Keir Starmer hosts the French President, Monsieur Macron, in Downing Street. That's a very French way of saying it. This comes after reports suggested he blamed Starmer for the illegal migration crisis, suggesting we make it too easy for those crossing the channel to work in this country illegally and indeed receive benefits. Has he got a point? Are the pull factors to blame?
Elsewhere, Christian Horner has been sacked and released from his operational duties as the boss of Red Bull's Formula One racing team. The news comes a year after the scandal that engulfed him over sex texts he reportedly sent to a female employee.
I think that patients like me will not understand why, having received a 28.9% pay increase, resident doctors are planning to go on strike.
Back for more. Yes, resident doctors, the new name for junior doctors, have narrowly voted for more strikes over pay despite already receiving a 28.9% pay hike. While the Health Secretary warns those striking doctors the public will not forgive you.
And as more than 400 Chagosians move to London, one council is warning they desperately need more money to cope with the number of islanders moving to the UK.
Gregg Wallace is fired from MasterChef as 50 more people have come forward to make allegations against him. In a statement on social media, the former BBC presenter claims he has now been diagnosed with autism and that he was given no protection.
So they're inside number 10 now, aren't they? The president,
fly on that wall.
President, his wife, Keir Starmer and his wife, Lady Starmer. Lots to be talked about.
And there was that sort of televised moment, sitting on those chairs in front of the fireplace, all softly, nicey. But of course, there are going to be some big, hard deals that have to be made. It would be deeply embarrassing for the French president to come on this extravagant 3-day visit with all the bells and whistles, the red carpets, the elegant dinners and all the rest of it, and walk away without a deal being signed. I mean, they really do have to agree something.
Yeah, do you know what? I do agree with President Macron, even though I don't like that it's coming from him, that we have too many pull factors. For example, the hotel accommodation is much nicer accommodation than it would be to stay in a Calais camp, for example. And that may be drawing people to this country, as well as the opportunity to work illegally in this country. Yes, that is absolutely correct. But my question is, why then have we sent the French £700 million if the issue is all of our pull factors in this country? That is a bit frustrating.
Of course, the golden chalice here is to return people back to France. That would be the simplest and easiest thing. Forget Rwanda, forget anywhere else. If we could just return these people back to France, or at least a huge number of them, that would go a long, long way to fixing the problem. Problem is, for Macron, even if he wanted to do that, other EU countries are saying, hang on, do we want all these more people back in Europe? Wouldn't they come back to Italy or to Greece? I mean, these countries are now potentially going to be the sticking point in what is turning into a much wider European negotiation.
I just worry what Keir Starmer will give away in order to try and get this one-in, one-out deal going. gbnews.com/yoursay. Get in touch throughout this show. We'll also show you something that happened in the House of Commons. A certain Lee Anderson speaking out. But let's get to the headlines.
Thank you very much. The top stories. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch pressed Sir Keir Starmer on tax rises at Prime Minister's questions today, with the Prime Minister committing not to raise income tax, VAT or national insurance on employees, as promised in Labour's manifesto. Ms Badenoch, though, also put it to him that he's flirting with calls for a wealth tax.
Mr Speaker, in their manifesto last year, Labour promised not to increase income tax, not to increase national insurance and not to increase VAT. Does the Prime Minister still stand by his promises?
Yes.
It is rare that he's able to give a clear answer, but I'm glad that he has done so, because he also promised, in fact, he boasted that he solved the doctor strike, but only a Prime Minister who was so weak and giving 28% pay rise to doctors, only now we see that they're still voting to strike again. He folds in every negotiation and claims that it is a triumph. Yes, he does. And we saw at the budget, Mr Speaker, more promises. The Chancellor promised that she would lift the freeze on income tax and national insurance thresholds, because in her words, they hurt working people. Is that still government policy?
We are absolutely fixed on our fiscal rules. We remain committed to them. We remain committed to our budget, to our manifesto commitments. I realise that sticking to your fiscal rules and your manifesto commitments is a bit unfamiliar to the party opposite, but it's because of the decisions the Chancellor took, that this government has taken, that we can update the House. £120 billion of inward investment into this country since we took office. Business confidence at a 9-year high. That's longer than the Leader Opposition has been in Parliament. Deloitte this week saying the UK is now the best place to invest, creating 384,000 jobs. What a contrast to the mess that we inherited from the party opposite.
The French president is being hosted by the Prime Minister at number 10 Downing Street. The pair arrived a short while ago, where they will be hosted today and tomorrow. The pair will hold talks as the UK pushes for France to do more to stop illegal migrant crossings. Mr Macron's demanding tough action to make the UK less attractive to illegal migrant arrivals. The Prime Minister hopes to strike a one-in, one-out deal to send small boat migrants back to the continent in exchange for the UK accepting asylum seekers in Europe who have a British link. While this follows Macron's visit to see King Charles, he and the King enjoyed a long goodbye as the two men bid farewell after a successful start to the French leader's state visit. In a sign of their friendship, the King and the French leader clasped hands as they parted company at Windsor Castle when the first element of the 3-day trip came to an end. Scandals say they are waiting to die in limbo, with just hundreds having received compensation to date. In a hard-hitting report, the chair of the public inquiry into the disaster, Sir Brian Langstaff, said there were obvious injustices in the way the scheme had been devised. He adds only 460 people had received compensation. It's thought 30,000 people were infected with HIV and hepatitis B or C in the 1970s and 80s after being given contaminated blood products on the NHS. Resident doctors in England will walk out for 5 days later this month. They'll walk off the job from 7 a.m. on the 25th of July in a dispute over pay, the British Medical Association said. More than 26,000 resident doctors voted today in favour of strikes. Reports suggest Christian Horner has been sacked by the Red Bull Formula One team, but Horner's team denies this is the case. The British team principal became involved in a scandal last year about texts sent to a female employee. The 51-year-old has been in charge of the Formula One team since its inception in 2005, leading them to 8 Drivers' Championship and 6 Constructors' Championship titles. Gregg Wallace has been sacked as presenter of MasterChef after an independent inquiry into allegations of serious misconduct. The decision comes as 50 new claims emerge, including accusations that Wallace groped colleagues and exposed himself to junior staff. He denies the allegations, though admitted some of his past comments had been inappropriate. And thousands of cases that would normally be heard in front of a jury should be decided by judges alone, according to recommendations made by a former senior judge. There are almost 77,000 cases waiting for trial in the Crown Court in England and Wales, meaning some defendants and victims are waiting years for justice. Sir Brian Leveson suggested reforms to reduce the risk of total system collapse, but some barristers argue juries are essential for fair justice. Director of Public Prosecutions Stephen Parkinson said this report is a bold but necessary response to the mounting pressures facing our justice system. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 9 minutes past 2 and some breaking news now for you. Reports suggest that plans are now being drawn up for Donald Trump to visit the UK in the coming weeks. Those plans starting to be drawn up over the coming weeks.
In the coming weeks? So will he visit in the coming weeks? That would be very soon.
I think we're expecting a September visit.
Yes, and we're now in the beginning of July. But, you know, time moves quickly, doesn't it?
Everything's measured in a matter of weeks.
Interesting this has come out while we have the French president here already.
I wonder if that's to sort of imply that this is less to do with Trump and more something to do with a Foreign Office regular arrangement. Perhaps it's to dilute the controversy of such a visit.
Yes, perhaps. It'll be exciting nonetheless. Sources have suggested the US president is likely to touch down in Scotland to visit his golf courses at the end of July or beginning of August. So will we be rolling out the red carpet? Will this be a state visit or is this just a visit?
I think the government has already confirmed that the Scotland visit will be separate to the official state visit. This will just be a sort of a touchdown. And of course, Macron has come to the United Kingdom on lots of occasions, but this is his first state visit with the red carpet, with the golden carriages, with the inspection of guards and all the rest of it. That's sort of the banqueting and just visiting, not the state visit.
Visiting those golf courses. Very important indeed. Well, we'll bring you any updates on that front. But in the meantime, yes, President Macron, the French president, has blamed Britain for the soaring numbers of migrants crossing the Channel, despite, of course, the UK paying over £700 million to the French since 2018.
Well, Macron demanded Sir Keir Starmer do more to address the various pull factors that encourage illegal crossings. So does the French president have a point?
Well, does he have a point? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. You may not appreciate it coming from the French president, but that doesn't mean he's wrong about the various pull factors that there are. You can come to this country and work illegally, can't you? You can come to this country and receive hotel accommodation, food, water, and a little bit of cash on the side too.
Mobile phones.
So does he have a point? But if you were watching PMQs earlier, you might not have been able to hear Nigel Farage in the chamber. Let's listen back.
And that we demand, the country demands, that you say to the French president, will you shut up?
Don't be so disrespectful.
That you say to the French president, we will not accept undocumented males across the English Channel, and that you are not dictated to by an increasingly arrogant, anti-Brexit French president.
His proposal for 10 years, wagging the Tory dog, has been to break everything and claim that's how you fix things, to stick two fingers up at your neighbours and then expect them to work with us. And he votes against the Borders Bill, which gives more powers to our law enforcement to deal with security at our border. And Mr. Speaker, the reason for that is he has no interest in fixing the problem because he wants to milk it and exploit it. That's the truth about him and his party.
Well, there was a lot of raucous when Nigel Farage stood up to ask his question. I mean, we couldn't actually hear it in the beginning of that clip, but there was more where you could barely hear him. He had to sit back down, stand back up again, and of course...
someone saying, shut up, to someone else, then someone saying, don't be so disrespectful. That was Sarah Potchin, I think.
But it is the duty of the Speaker to make sure that there is order in the House, to maintain order and make sure that all MPs can be heard. So that perhaps led Lee Anderson to step up and call a point of order on just such that issue.
Honourable Member for Clacton asked what I thought was quite a reasonable question, because I knew what the question was going to be, but during PMQs I couldn't hear a single word. I'm sure people in this chamber couldn't, because people like the Honourable Member for Dewsbury behind me never shut up all the way through. The Honourable Member for Clacton was trying to ask a reasonable question. We do not subscribe to this sort of dog whistle politics in Reform UK. So, Mr. Speaker, could you please give us advice on how to stop this behaviour in the future?
Oh, he's not. He's an angry man, isn't he, Lee Anderson? They're calling out Iqbal Mohammed, who's the independent Member of Parliament for Dewsbury, who apparently was leading the heckling.
And not being particularly parliamentary while he was doing it. But of course, this all fits into that wider issue we were talking about earlier. Macron suggesting that the Brits are, to some extent, to blame for these pull factors bringing across small-boat migrants.
Well, we're joined by international security and border control expert Henry Bolton and the political commentator and migration expert Mike Jones. And I believe you two have slightly different takes on this whole thing. Henry, we'll start with you. Is Macron right that it is all of our faults, or at least the government's faults, successive government's faults probably, and that we just have far too many pull factors to this country, and the French, you know, they're trying to help, but actually it's our fault?
In a word, Macron is absolutely right. It's not 100% our doing that people want to come here, but a great deal of the reason that people come to the United Kingdom is because it is advantageous and attractive for them to do so. And I'm not specifically talking or particularly talking about hotel accommodation when they get here, or getting 40-odd quid a week, or whatever it is. I'm talking about the opportunity that it presents them. We know that about 30% of these people, at least, although they should not be, are working on the black economy. There is no punishment for them if that's detected. There is no sort of no sanction against them. There's virtually no sanction against those people who do employ them because we've got no mechanism to work through that issue. We've not put the safeguards in place, and very, very few of them are actually denied a permanent right to remain in the UK. So there is every attraction for them to come here. And for the French, if we put ourselves in their shoes for a minute, they are saying, look, all of these people who come to the North French coast with the intention of getting in these dinghies and crossing the channel and getting to you are actually not because of us. We're not causing that problem. You are, by making the place attractive to come to. And that's why they don't want to remain here. They want to come to you. And largely, very largely, that is absolutely correct. And what I fear is that with all of the ideas of pushing back with warships, I mean, we're going to have 7 frigates operational in the Royal Navy by the end of the year. You know, these pushback of boats and so on, and all these entirely politically, diplomatically, legally and operationally impractical ideas that sound very seductive, but actually are entirely impractical and unfeasible. They dominate headlines. Okay. They dominate the discussion. They attract public attention and support. And in the meantime, that lets the government off the hook, because the government's saying, well, look, listen to these idiots over here who've got these extreme ideas, which just can't work. We've got the only answer. So in the middle, the serious thinking, strategic approach is being deafened out. And that's a problem. Well, and I think Macron is absolutely right, yes.
Well, let's put some of those ideas to Mike Jones now. The idea that this is largely, perhaps, due to pull factors rather than the, perhaps, particulars of border control.
Macron is both right and wrong. He's correct in saying the impetus should be on the British government to create a deterrent effect, but he's been very sly and sneaky in the sort of pull factors that he mentions. You know, he talks about the grey economy, sort of, you know, family reunification, and the benefits system. But what Macron did not mention is the Human Rights Act, the legal architecture that exists here, the fact that the Human Rights Act embeds the ECHR, the European Convention of Human Rights, into British law. Macron is ideologically committed to the ECHR. Of course, the French government ignore it every now and again, but, you know, France are a fundamental part of the Council of Europe. So, yeah, you know, Macron is correct in saying we need to create a deterrent, but he's being very selective.
Also, Mike, it's very annoying as well. It's very annoying for the British taxpayer, isn't it? Because if this is all true, and as Macron says, it's the pull factors, we made it far too easy for illegal migrants over in this country, and that's why they're coming, then why on earth have we sent so much money to the French?
Well, the money was sent to the French by the previous Tory government, who bizarrely are now against that policy. The French haven't, you know, the French haven't deceived us. The French basically say, we're not going to intercept in deep waters. Unilateral boat returns to France, which is the Reform UK policy, is completely out of the question. We will cooperate with you at the margins. Sunak knew this, the Tories knew this, Labour know this. But the French are stuck between a rock and a hard place because they do want to cooperate with the British, but they don't want to be a holding pen for illegal immigrants. I mean, to some extent, they are already, but it would increase massive political pressure in the short and medium term if they did cooperate with us fully. Would it solve the problem long term? Yes, but democracies aren't completely rational, if you catch my drift.
Sure, and just quickly to Henry, is it not the case that one of these big pull factors is the English language, which we can't really do that much about?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But then you look at a lot of the people who have been coming and they're not English speakers. But yes, it is a part of the pull factor. But we've got to address we can't influence everything. And as I've said, it's not 100% down to the pull factors. And just very briefly, Mike's right about the HRA and the ECHR, but that's part of the strategic thinking. What legal adjustments do we need to make? Repeals of laws, new laws, whatever it is. It's got to be in place. The French take our money to respond to requests from the British government to do things. And the French are going, it's not going to do any good, but if you want us to do it, then you're going to have to pay us to do it, because it's not going to help.
Well, yes, Henry Bolton, Mike Jones, thank you very much indeed for both of your time this afternoon. A complex issue, or is it really?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is clearly, it's got to be a bit of both, right? There's a reason why people want to come across to the United Kingdom. Now, some of it is how easily they can work.
Don't blame it on the English language, though, because that's a bit of a cop-out.
If you talk to people in the camps, I mean, I watched Patrick to talk to these people in the camps, and now a lot of them said, well, we want to go somewhere where we can speak the language. I mean, not many people who are travelling halfway around the world speak French. A lot of people at least have a rudimentary understanding of English. And that is one of the biggest pull factors, I think, that is often ignored.
But that's not one that we can control, so it's almost irrelevant, because it's not one we can control when we're talking about government policy.
Exactly, which is why...
We can't say, we're going to change our language.
No, exactly, which is why perhaps we should accept that if we want to be a rich and global country, people will always want to come to the United Kingdom. So perhaps we shouldn't try and make the UK less attractive or poorer or anything else, and just have stronger border control in the most physical sense.
You want to be less attractive to illegal migrants?
Well, you're always going to be attractive to illegal migrants if you're a rich country. I think that should just be a baseline assumption. Well,
that is true, but it does appear as though England is particularly attractive, and I imagine it's got something to do with the accommodation and your ability to work in the black market over here quite nicely. And not have anything done to you as a result.
Part of it, but when we can track every single boat coming across the channel, I mean, it is only
some of the people don't even want to
legal agreements
don't even want
that stop
asylum here. They just want to get here, abscond, live in the hotels maybe either, and work a bit on the side.
Yeah, I think they do want to work as well. That's the key element.
As a Deliveroo driver or whatever.
Yeah. Well, we're going to move on to another thorny issue today. Christian Horner has been released from operational duties as Red Bull's Formula One team principal after 20 years.
Is that a nice way of saying sacked?
Well, I think he's denying that is the word that should be used.
Right, OK, it's in quotation marks. His dismissal comes 17 months after he was accused by a female colleague of inappropriate behaviour. He has been twice exonerated of these claims by the Formula One team's parent company.
Well, Red Bull published a statement saying Red Bull has released Christian Horner from his operational duties with effect from today and has appointed Laurent Mekies, the CEO of Red Bull Racing.
OK, well, we're joined by PA Media's F1 correspondent, Philip Duncan, who better to talk to on this. Philip, so what exactly has happened here? Is this about what happened a year or so ago with these sex texts and all the alleged bad behaviour there?
Hi, I think it's a combination of a number of things, really, and I guess the scandal that engulfed Horner and Red Bull a year or so ago is obviously one of them. Another is obviously the team's form on track, which hasn't really been up to it in the last year or so, or ever since those allegations or those texts broke, really. And obviously, again, the other one is Max Verstappen's future. He's their star driver. He's the four-time world champion. But there's been a bit of a suggestion that if Horner remains, he might go. So I think all of those things have perhaps played into the role of him being removed from his position as CEO today.
This is, of course, a really curious story in so many ways. People are raising eyebrows, but he was, of course, someone who held that position for 2 decades. How is this going to change the sport?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he is was the longest-serving team principal in Formula One, and he brought so much success to Red Bull with 8 Drivers' World Championship and 6 Constructors' World Championship. So 14 in all. The likes of Sebastian Vettel winning 4 drivers' titles there. Max Verstappen, who is F1's sort of greatest driver at the moment, winning 4 titles in a row too. So. Yeah, huge news because he's such a big figure in the sport that he'll no longer be around. I mean, he's been there since 2005. He's attended every race since 2005. So for him to no longer be involved in F1 is big news.
Absolutely. Well, Philip Duncan, thank you very much indeed for your time this afternoon. PA Media's F1 correspondent there.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come.
I think that patients like me will not understand why, having received a 28.9% pay increase, resident doctors are planning to go on strike.
It's a good question. Let us know how you feel about this. Resident doctors, that's the new name, remember, for junior doctors. They've narrowly voted for more strikes over pay, despite already receiving a 28.9% pay hike not too long ago. Now, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, warns these striking doctors the public will not forgive you. Is that right?
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. Welcome back. It's 2:28. Now, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has warned resident doctors...
That's what we have to call them now.
...that the public won't forgive them.
Well, it comes as the British Medical Association members voted for another wave of strike action, a narrow margin of victory when you take into account how many people actually voted. But, of course, 90% of those that did vote, which was 55%, voted to put down their stethoscopes once again in this long-running dispute, despite a 29% pay rise.
Yes, so are the resident doctors right to strike? That is the question. We're joined by City AM opinion and features editor Alice Denby and the GP and BMA member Dr Basha Mukherjee. Let's start with you, Basha. You're the doctor in the room. Tell us, are these resident doctors right to strike? OK, I don't think we have Basha yet. Let's go to Alice Denby in the studio. Alice, tell us, are they right to strike?
No, I think their demand's completely unreasonable. I don't think anybody in the private sector is getting something like a 60% pay rise, nor does anyone in the private sector think they're somehow entitled to a pay rise unless, pay rises in the private sector are based on performance or resources within the company. I think Wes Streeting's absolutely right that we simply cannot afford the pay rises they're demanding. And even if you accept their argument that they somehow deserve pay restoration back to what they were earning in 2008, none of their sums add up. The amount they've calculated that would bring them back to 2008 levels is based on RPI, which, as I'm sure we all know, is a much higher measure of inflation than CPI, which is much more commonly used. That's what the OBR uses, what the Treasury uses. 2008, which they've benchmarked to, is a completely random year. And in fact, they've chosen it because it follows the Blair-Brown years, which were very generous in terms of public sector spending. In fact, if you benchmarked it from 2015, they've actually had a 7.9% pay rise. So the demands are completely unreasonable, even aside from the fact that they're already the best paid public servants in Britain. Average starting salary of £38,000, average salary overall of £54,000. And the fact that they get basically automatically promoted every year, and there's no performance element to their pay at all. I think this is completely unreasonable, and I'm not surprised that only 21% of the public supports this strike.
Well, there's a lot there. Let's throw that to Basha Mukherjee. The best paid public servants from day dot, and no performance-related attachments to the inevitable pay progression.
Concept that there is no performance review is completely not based on the truth at all. Absolutely, we are assessed on our performance, and only then are we allowed to progress to the next year. So we have to work very, very hard to progress from one pay packet to the next. That involves a lot of exams, a lot of other arduous hard work, portfolio, lots of red tape, lots of admin work that is unpaid for, essentially. And even if we're talking about, the fact that the numbers don't match up, whatever it is, the point is the world that we live in right now in the UK, it is not palatable for doctors to stay in the UK and work in the UK when there are so many better options everywhere else. And the quality and the condition of the work that we are having to put up with, that is what we need to try to hold and make it incentivized for doctors to stay in the UK and stay in the NHS. And unfortunately, with the rate of inflation and just the cost of living, everything thrown in the mix, and just the pay rises that we have gotten just doesn't match up.
OK, well, let's put that to Alice, because I think that is one of the more fair points, Alice, that some of these doctors are very mobile, like the millionaires and billionaires that we talk about, and they could move elsewhere and take their skills with them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely they could, but I think then they should accept that the public may not, retain the sympathy of the public. If they're holding over us, they're holding patients to ransom and holding over us the threat of leaving the country. I don't think that's a very attractive way to make your argument, and I don't think a British public who bash their pots and pans for them need to necessarily continue supporting them when they're behaving this way. I mean, the last time we had strike actions, over 1 million patient appointments were cancelled. That is people living in pain and agony, people like my mum who needs a hip replacement, waiting ever longer and suffering, being held to ransom by these doctors.
I mean, it does sound like it's an extraordinary amount of money that is being involved in all of this. Basha, there's already been a 28.9% pay rise. No public servant has received anything like as much as resident doctors have received over the course of the last year. Why on earth is the BMA choosing this moment to come back for even more?
The BMA has chosen it because there was a discussion last year for there to be full pay restoration to the levels of 2008. And clearly the communication has broken down. That's why we're here at this point of striking, because the idea was that both the government and the BMA would keep their end of the bargain. And right now, that's not what's happening. And that's why we have to resort back to striking, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it's bad timing. I'm not sure there's any public support there for you, Basha, considering the state of the public finances. Not the right time, I'd suggest, but that's just my opinion. Dr. Basha Mukherjee, thank you very much indeed, and Alice Denby from City AM to a good debate there. Let us know at home what you make of it. I sense that perhaps the doctors have lost the room, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think people might have been on their side had they not just received a 28.9% pay rise. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come.
Yes, Gregg Wallace. Well, he's been fired from MasterChef and the BBC. 50 more people have come forward to make allegations against him. In a statement on social media, though, he curiously claimed he's now been diagnosed with autism and that the BBC knew about his neurodiversity, but he was given no protection.
But after the break, as more than 400 Chagosians moved to London in the wake of these negotiations over giving away the Chagos Islands, one council is warning they desperately need more money to cope with the number of islanders moving to the UK. That's coming after your latest news headlines.
Yes, thank you. The headlines at 2:30. The French president is being hosted by the Prime Minister at number 10 Downing Street. The pair arrived a short while ago, where they will be hosted today and tomorrow. They'll hold talks as the UK pushes for France to do more to stop illegal migrant crossings. Resident doctors in England will walk out for 5 days. Later this month, they'll walk off the job from 7 a.m. on the 25th of July in a dispute over pay. Reports suggest Christian Horner's been sacked by the Red Bull Formula One team. His team denies this is the case, though. The British team principal became involved in a scandal last year about text messages sent to a female employee. Gregg Wallace has been sacked as presenter of MasterChef after an independent inquiry into allegations of serious misconduct. The decision comes as 50 new claims emerge, including accusations that Wallace groped colleagues and exposed himself to junior staff. He denies those allegations. Those are the latest headlines for now.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Most places having a fine, bright day today with some summer sunshine, and temperatures are starting to tick up. Another hot spell of weather is on the way, courtesy of this high pressure that's building in across the country. Now, these weather fronts dangling across northern Scotland. Quite a bit of thick cloud here at times, and maybe some drizzly rain possible across Orkney in particular later on. The cloud thick enough for maybe the odd light shower over southwest Scotland. And there's more cloud than yesterday over parts of England and Wales. It's not blue skies all the way, far from it, but most areas dry and bright, and with some sunshine coming through at times. Temperatures getting up into the low 20s quite widely, maybe 27, 28 in and around the London area. It's a bit cooler further north, where we've got the cloud and the patchy outbreaks of rain. But further south, it should be fine. I think we'll see the cloud breaking up even more as we go into this evening. A fine summer's evening for the majority. A bit of mist and low cloud possible around the coasts of the east of Northern Ireland, and some thicker cloud again across the Western Isles of Scotland and the Northern Isles. The patchy rain edging away from Orkney and pushing up towards Shetland during this evening, so turning a bit damp here. As we go through the nights, not a great deal of change. Most places will stay dry. If anything, we'll see the cloud melting away, certainly from many inland areas. Always the possibility of the mist and low cloud returning to some of the coasts, especially around the southwest. And the cloud will thicken once more over the Western Isles of Scotland, with some drizzly rain pushing back in here through the early hours as the breeze picks up. Quite a warm night, temperatures holding up in the teens in most urban areas. On to Thursday, and it will be a hotter day, a sunnier day for most of England and Wales, southern and eastern parts of Scotland. Northern Ireland also probably seeing more sunshine tomorrow. The north coast may be seeing some thicker cloud, and the west coast of Scotland again susceptible to cloud and rain. Quite breezy here as well, but for most it's all about the sunshine and those temperatures rising into the mid-20s, 30 for some.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A75 is closed in both directions at Creetown due to a road traffic collision. Motorists should use the available diversion route and allow extra time for their journey. There are roadworks on the M4 westbound between Junction 24 at Coldra and Junction 28 at Tredegar Park, with diversions in place. In Suffolk, expect congestion on the A14 eastbound between junctions 55 at Copduck and 56 at Ipswich Docks, leading to delays of about 10 minutes. And on the trains, Greater Anglia is experiencing disruption between Westerfield and Felixstowe, while Hull Trains is running a reduced service today. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It's 2:39 in the afternoon, and it is Wednesday, the 9th of July. And Tom suggested that one of the major pull factors to this country for illegal migrants is the English language. Yep. Now, this got to some of you. A lot of people are getting in touch to say, well, Tom, if it's English that's the pull factor, then why do we pay so many millions for interpreters?
Because it's one of the pull factors. That doesn't mean it's the only pull factor, but it is one of the big pull factors.
French is the big language in a lot of African countries, is it not?
It is, and we don't get many of those people coming to the United Kingdom. It's not people that... We don't need French interpreters in the NHS. Now, the people that come to the United Kingdom perhaps have the best understanding of English of any other language they know, but it could still be very broken English. It likely is. For many of them, they can probably speak a sort of relatively rudimentary level of it, and some won't be able to speak it. But to deny that it is a pull factor at all when it is the most widely spoken language in the world, frankly, thanks to our success as a country over the most recent few centuries, I think just is to deny reality.
Sure, but I think the things that we can change, other than in our language, are more important for this discussion.
What language
such
do you
as
think we should adopt?
The hotel accommodation.
Yeah.
What language do I think we should adopt?
We could speak Welsh. That would drive people away.
Yes, no one would understand that, yes. And I don't know what I'd do, actually, if we all spoke Welsh. I'd be lost.
All I've got is diolch and vow.
Let us know if you can speak Welsh. I know we've got a lot of Welsh viewers. Also, on the doctors, yes, a lot of you are just simply saying, Andy, I have respect for doctors, but they knew the pay structure when they entered the profession. And that is such a good point. When you sign up for a job in the public sector, you know what the pay scale is. And you know how it's going to be. Some of these junior doctors seem to be shocked.
Yeah.
Taken aback.
I mean, the pay is objectively better than it has been at any point in the last, half decade, maybe decade.
Well, so you can work your way up, take on a couple of private gigs, and you're, a massive six figures, aren't you?
That is the point that I think we've missed in this entire debate. The number of formerly junior, now resident doctors that I know who run a Botox clinic on the side, who do sort of an aesthetics thing.
Is that why your forehead's so shiny, Tom?
I can actually raise my eyebrows, so there we go. That's proof that I haven't resorted to some of those things that other people on television sometimes do.
No names.
But
could Gregg Wallace have had Botox?
Let's move on from the industry secrets and move on to absolutely MasterChef presenter Gregg Wallace. He's been sacked after an inquiry into alleged misconduct.
Yes, so 50 more people have approached the BBC with fresh claims about the TV presenter, including allegations he groped one MasterChef worker and pulled his trousers down in front of another.
Well, Gregg Wallace denies the allegations and posted a lengthy Instagram post claiming the most damaging claims were found to be baseless after a full and forensic 6-month investigation.
He added, I will not go quietly. I will not be cancelled for convenience. I was tried by media and hung out to dry well before the facts were established.
Well, let's get more on this now with the former showbiz editor at the Daily Express, Lee Purves. Lee, thanks so much for joining us. This is a big story. Gregg Wallace was one of the biggest names on the BBC, and he says he's been cancelled.
Absolutely. And, it doesn't take anyone without half a mindset to realise that actually he is furious. He worked for the BBC for more than 21 years. He was a very high-profile figure for the BBC. And, of course, the timing of this is all very interesting. Obviously, Gregg's given this furious statement vowing legal action. And at the same time, the BBC is sort of hitting back, revealing they've had 50 more accusations, allegations, which obviously Gregg denies, against him. The more he fuels the fire, you wonder what might come on the back of this. It's extremely interesting how he has turned against the media. It's chicken and egg, isn't it? One feeds the other to a certain extent. So again, let's see, wait and watch what happens. However, there's no doubt that the 50 allegations which have come forward from a legal point of view, obviously the BBC and the television production company involved absolutely have to take those extremely seriously, and there will be more investigations going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and reports that he may have suffered a heart attack or the symptoms rushed to hospital. Do we know about that?
So some sources, I believe, close to him actually do say that he had a suspected heart attack on the back end of this weekend, Sunday, Monday, and actually is recovering, and this stress is not helping him. Again, the timing of this is all very interesting. So again, let's wait and watch, and obviously wish him the best of health for a speedy recovery.
Yes, and he also claimed that he's been diagnosed with autism, and that when he was working at the BBC, his neurodiversity issues were known but not handled well, potentially.
I think this is a really sensitive area as well. Raising the autism, I know so many people with autism who go about their daily lives and do not bring that into it, especially when it comes to their profession. And I think, the character that we've seen with Gregg Wallace, obviously, he's always been very outspoken and quite definite in what he purports and how he carries himself and his body language. So to bring autism into it, one could say is just really quite bitter and not fair.
Yeah, it is remarkable how many people can be diagnosed with something when they get into some form of difficulty.
Situation.
But perhaps that's the best place to leave that one there. Lee Burbs, thanks so much for joining us and talking through a curious issue there.
Well, in response to these latest allegations, a spokesperson for Gregg Wallace said Gregg continues to cooperate fully with the ongoing Banijay UK review and, as previously stated, denies engaging in behaviour of a sexually harassing nature.
Well, a BBC spokesperson says Banijay UK instructed the law firm Lewis Silkin to run an investigation into the allegations against Gregg Wallace. We are not going to comment until this investigation is complete and the findings are published.
OK, well, if you want to escape and head to a hot country, here's the travel forecast.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Largely sunny skies across the Mediterranean. It is a little bit breezy in parts of Greece and Turkey over the next couple of days, but still lots of blue sky to be had here. Small chance of a shower in Croatia, but mostly they're staying away to the north and east. Small chance of a shower across Catalonia as well, but most of Spain dry and sunny. Bit of an onshore breeze bringing some cloud to the coasts of Portugal, and fine and sunny in the Canaries. Continued risk of a shower or two in Barcelona into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Britain is now 10 to 3 and a London council has asked the government for more money to cope with the increasing number of Chagos Islanders moving to the UK.
Yes, the council is Hillingdon, and it says it's seen over 400 Chagosians who have British citizenship arrive in the past year.
Well, it comes after the UK government signed a deal handing over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, and that sped up an exodus of these islanders.
Well, the council wants the government to do the right thing and provide more funding to cover costs, including temporary accommodation, to relieve some of the local pressures.
Well, let's speak to the leader of Hillingdon Council, Councillor Ian Edwards, who can join us now. Thanks for joining us, Councillor. This is a clear and present problem for your borough.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for inviting me on. You're absolutely right. The council is able to provide this support. That isn't the difficulty. It is who pays for it that's the problem. At the moment, the government will only fund us for the first 10 days of support, which is clearly not enough. We have spent £500,000 up until the end of the last financial year in support Chagosians that have arrived in this country. And the government have offered us about £70,000 in compensation.
Ian, what's that money going towards? Why do we need to be spending so much money on these people? What sort of things?
We're a port authority, so we have responsibility for anybody who turns up at Heathrow and requires public assistance. These people are lawfully entitled to be in the country, so they are entitled to the support of the state. We are the body responsible for that within Heathrow, and of course this means that we have to provide them.
Do they not have means of their own?
Some of them
when
do.
They arrive?
Some of them do, and the government does give advice that they're responsible for their own future accommodation, but they arrive without having taken that advice and then looking to the council for support. And of course, part of that is the accommodation costs, but it's also just the administration cost and officer time of receiving these people, supporting them and helping them settle into the country.
And Ian, there have been hundreds of these people who've come over the course of the last 12 months. Clearly, this is as a result of the government's frantic negotiations with Mauritius and the fear that these people, frankly, have for their freedom and their rights within Mauritius, where I understand they could go to prison for 10 years for even saying that the Chagos Islands are British.
Well, I also hear those same stories from the people, but I'm not clear on what's going on in the Chagos Islands or in Mauritius. All I know is that we have a duty to support them. We're doing so, but the government isn't funding that, and they're expecting Hillingdon residents to pay for it, which is clearly not acceptable.
OK, well, Councillor Ian Edwards, thank you very much indeed for coming on the show and talking about this issue. Hillingdon Council leader there, Councillor Ian Edwards.
Yeah, I think it's not really been discussed how there have been hundreds and hundreds of Chagosians who've had to move to the UK after this dreadful deal was
Yeah, I
signed.
do take that, but I also wonder about, how many homeless people are there in Hillingdon who are looking for temporary accommodation, Anyway, a spokesperson from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government has said we're giving Hillingdon Council funding to support Chagosian arrivals where arrival numbers are creating immediate local pressures. Government guidance is clear that people must make their own accommodation arrangements before they travel. Right, OK.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain, and that has been Good Afternoon Britain. But don't you worry, because the fun doesn't stop here at GB News. Yes, the one and only Martin Daubney is up next.
Yeah, guys, well, I'll tell you what, disgraceful scenes today at PMQs, I think. Utterly disgraceful. They simply wouldn't let Nigel Farage ask a question without interrupting him. You couldn't even hear it on the radio. You couldn't even hear it on television. What on earth are they playing at? Yesterday, Macron snubbed him. The establishment is trying to silence Nigel Farage. They're trying to gag him. The Speaker lost control. The back row, independents led by Jeremy Corbyn, wagging their heads. What are they playing at? If you want someone to talk, let them have a voice. Is the establishment trying to silence Nigel Farage? I certainly think he is. Plus, of course, the Labour Party has once again forgotten what a woman is. They're trying to introduce a biological man as a woman's officer. You couldn't make it up. That's all coming 3 till 6 first as you ever.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Most places having a fine, bright day today with some summer sunshine, and temperatures are starting to tick up. Another hot spell of weather is on the way, courtesy of this high pressure that's building in across the country. Now, these weather fronts dangling across northern Scotland. Quite a bit of thick cloud here at times, and maybe some drizzly rain possible across Orkney in particular later on. The cloud thick enough for maybe the odd light shower over southwest Scotland. And there's more cloud than yesterday over parts of England and Wales. It's not blue skies all the way, far from it, but most areas dry and bright, and with some sunshine coming through at times. Temperatures getting up into the low 20s quite widely, maybe 27, 28 in and around the London area. It's a bit cooler further north, where we've got the cloud and the patchy outbreaks of rain. But further south, it should be fine. I think we'll see the cloud breaking up even more as we go into this evening. A fine summer's evening for the majority. A bit of mist and low cloud